Welcome to Straight from the Gavel. I'm your host, Dave Barber, coming to you this day from room 35, often the site, in fact, frequently the site of the House Finance Committee. And it gives us a great deal of pleasure to each and every week invite a member of the General Assembly in and discuss some of the things they've been working on and how it might impact all Rhode Islanders. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome a gentleman making his first appearance on Straight from the Gavel. We're certainly glad to have him with us, the Honorable State Representative Marvin Abney. Representative, it's great to see you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
And of course, you know, you're one of the luckiest guys in the building because you represent, without question, not only one of the most beautiful parts of Rhode Island, but certainly you could make the argument for one of the most picturesque places in the country, Middletown and Newport. That's pretty special.
It is special, and it is beautiful. It's beautiful in the summer. It's beautiful in the fall. I was lucky enough to do a wedding, officiate a wedding down at the Yachting Center a couple of weeks ago, and it was a spectacular view of having 200 people at this wedding, 2 young kids from Rhode Island getting married, nice boats around. People could not believe it. So some days I pinch myself and go, do I live here?
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And again, since we are heading into fall, did you get any feedback from the business people? Was it a good summer season for the business folks? Tourism, was it solid?
For the most part, it was. I did talk to a lot of business people on Thames Street, small business owners, and they were pretty much satisfied with what had occurred. Obviously, you would like to have more always, but considering the economic conditions that we're going through, not in the state, but just in the nation, it was a fairly successful season for most of them.
You know, this is your maiden voyage on Straight from the Gavel, and since it is, this is a good opportunity for you to set the stage, telling our viewers about your journey to the State House. You have an interesting background, and certainly a diversified background. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and how you managed to run for state office.
You know, when I was in the military, I spent 20 years doing that. I went to a human relations course once, and in it I saw one of the best films I've ever seen before, and it was something to the effect of who you are is what you were when. If you can get a hold of it, you should see this. And it talks about that all of us are the sum total of experiences we've had in the past. I grew up in Texas, in the Deep South, in the 60s and 70s, to a single mom who was raising five children. And I grew up during a time of segregation. I went to a segregated high school. I clearly remember not being able to supposedly ride in a specific place on a bus or eat in the same place with my other friends. So that had an impact on myself and systems. But my mother used to always tell us that, Marvin, you know, no matter where you are, you can always become a part of what's happening and make a difference. So throughout my whole life, that's what I'd done. That's what she did. So when I retired and we moved to Newport, I immediately got involved with volunteering in the school systems, on different boards. And one thing led to another, and I always remember what she had said was that one person can make a difference. So I ran for school board the first time, and Russell Jackson, the gentleman that I replaced here, came in about 6 or 8 votes ahead of me. But I recall thinking, I'm new in town, I don't know anybody, but I did walk around door to door and talk to people, and they kind of listened. And from that point on, it was then city council running for. But I ran 4 times before elected to here. So my past has been about being involvement in the community. And I know it's an old adage, but giving back is just so important.
Well, you have a wife and children.
Yes.
Was it your wife that had the Rhode Island connection? Is that what brought you to Rhode Island in the first place?
Yes, my wife is born and raised in Newport. Not just Rhode Island, but a Newporter. Born in Newport Hospital. You have to have all of that pedigree in there. But yes, my wife, Cheryl Amato, was her maiden name. She had been here all her life. I met her as a young lieutenant when I was stationed in Connecticut, and 8 months later, we were married and have been married 34 years now. But that was the connection of coming to Rhode Island. After retiring, we were living in New York City. She said, I want to go home. And most Rhode Islanders at some point do want to come home.
Well, you may have met her as a young lieutenant, but you retired from the military as a major.
Yes, I did.
Major. Did that military background and military training Does it serve you well in your role as a state representative?
I think it does. In the military, the one thing you learn is teamwork. From day one until the day you leave, you're working together in some way as a team. And that's my sense of how people who work and serve for government should be. So we come from 50 different states, looking 50 different ways, but we all go in and get these strange looking haircuts. There's a method to the madness, but it helps us to understand that what we do is for the good of the whole, and that's what I see public service. So it's taught me how to look at things from a 500 viewpoint and from being right on the ground, and I've had that opportunity as both being an enlisted person and serving as an officer. So I think it had a lot to do with my ability to see the bigger picture, but understand that the smaller picture is just as important.
Well, maybe, that certainly makes good sense to me. Maybe we need more people serving in Congress from the military. Possibly they could get the spirit of teamwork a little bit more down pat. It's certainly, they're certainly having their troubles. Talking about the military, how proud are you of your own son, who's obviously continued in that direction, getting involved with the military himself? It must be a pretty proud thing for you to be able to experience now as a dad.
I must say that I am proud. First, let me say I have a great group of kids. I've got 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, and 4 granddaughters who keep me on my toes. Christian is my middle son, but I'm absolutely proud of him. And when he was here and was introduced on the floor, although he was my son, he was actually the son of all Rhode Islanders. He went to the United States Military Academy after going to public school here in Rhode Island. And I got to tell you, I think it was 34 students at the academy at the time that he went from Rhode Island. When you see those kids walking that long gray line that Patton and Eisenhower and all of the great leaders, MacArthur, that we've had, if you don't get chill bumps, you have no pulse. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, my goodness, there my son is, but there were 34 other sons and daughters of Rhode Islanders who were preparing to serve in ways that right now are unimaginable. So I was very proud of him. Although he was standing there as Christian Abney, Captain Abney, he was also standing there as Captain Abney of Rhode Island. And he always carries that with him.
Well, and I'll tell you what, he had an opportunity. In fact, we have some video of when he appeared in front of the General Assembly not too long ago and presented a flag from his tour. I believe it was in Afghanistan, yes, where he served. Some pretty tough duty there, I would think. Again, it had to be exciting for you, but I'm sure it was a pretty prideful moment for him as well.
It was a prideful moment for Christian. He loves Rhode Island. In fact, he's now at Fort Huachuca. He had 3 vacations to Afghanistan, if we call them vacations, but he's at Fort Huachuca now, and he's trying his best to get back to the East Coast, but he always loved Rhode Island. He was born in the Naval Hospital when I was deployed to Korea. All of his friends are still here, but he's always proud to come home and come back to his base, to who he is. And he thinks about it, and he calls us every week and talk about it all of the time. In fact, I think he's going to be home both Christmas and Thanksgiving, so we're looking forward to that.
That's terrific. So you're getting ready to go into year 2, not too very long from now. Is it what you expected? Are you enjoying it? Are you having fun serving the citizens of your district and the state of Rhode Island?
I try to make everything I do to have some sense of fun in it, even when it's serious, because it is serious work. But yes, it is a lot of what I expected. The pace is faster than what I imagined. You have a number of things coming at you at the same time, and there's nowhere to hide. You have a red button and a green button yes, in front of you, and at some point in time you have to press one or not be there, and that's not fair to your constituents. But it is a lot of what I expected. It took a lot of time to get to know people, to build relationships, because that's what a lot of this is all about. You've got 75 Type A people in a room, in a building, trying to get something done, and that can be a challenge at times. But I do enjoy it. It is a lot of what I expected, but I expect to learn more.
Well, speaking of that, learning more, it's my understanding that you have even, on your own dime, signed up and attended some conferences with the hopes of becoming even a better legislator. Tell us about that.
You know, whatever business you're in and whatever you're doing, you don't know it all. What you have to do is step outside of your comfort zone sometimes and learn more about what you're doing. So this summer, what I have done is I've attended so far 2 conferences that had to do with legislators from all over the country coming, discussing what they're doing in their states, discussing how their bodies, their chambers operate. And that's very important because you get a chance to understand and see that in many cases, Rhode Island, when they knew I was from Rhode Island, they would go, oh, well, you guys were out front on this. You guys were out front on that. It gives me pause to say, well, wait a minute, we're not doing as bad of a job as we portray on ourselves. But also, I learn how other legislators look at the same problems, and that's been very helpful for me.
Well, you know what? I've always been a pragmatist, too. If it works, do it. If you get an opportunity to interact with legislators from other parts of the country and they say, hey, we had a similar problem and we approached it this way, and by golly, we had good results. Or conversely, horrible results. What a great way to bootleg information and share ideas and take the good ones and leave the bad ones.
Now, that's the key. You have to be able to understand what has happened in the past in other places similar. Obviously, we're going to have some nuances that are our own, but it helps you understand how big a system, and I'm a systems person. The legislature is a system. It makes laws, it does a lot of things for nearly 1 million people, so it's not just one person doing it. But there are other people who've gone down the same road, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And one of the conferences that I attended was very technical in the sense that it helped you understand how large economies work. Is it true that having low tax rate makes people run to your state? Is it? Is it true that if you're building an economic policy that having an educated workforce or having not many regulations, do that work? To what extent does one work better than the other? So you learn how to combine all of those things to come up with policies that really help move an economy, a system of economies that I think we're all struggling with. Just as an aside, I have to say that I believe, and I know the leadership, both in the House and the Senate, does a good job when we first came on as freshmen of putting us in front of CEOs and people who are successful in business. But if you put 10 CEOs on one of these podiums, you're going to get 10 different answers, sometimes to the same question. And at the end of the day, you'll have some great ideas, but you'll still say, well, what really works? And that's what I think helps when you talk to other people who will say, I've been through the same thing, and here's some data to help you understand that. That's my job. People elected me to represent them, but it's my job to go above and beyond that to understand how these things work, and I appreciate that.
Well, and you're obviously doing that. So you also are a lesson on tenacity, because you mentioned that you didn't win the very first time you ran for office, and you're here. You come into your first session. I guess it should come as no surprise that Speaker Fox wanted to tap your military background and your experience with veterans issues and matters by placing you on the Veterans Affairs Committee. Makes perfect sense to me. That has to be gratifying, because I think it's fair to say you could be considered an expert on these kinds of problems.
Well, you know, I am so honored that the Speaker appointed me to that particular committee. And the reason is that Rhode Island has so many veterans from World War II to the Korean War to Vietnam to the Gulf War to the wars that we're fighting now, who I see all the time. One of the great advantages of living in a state, in quotes, as small as Rhode Island, you get to see people, and they talk to me about their concerns and their desires, and serving on a committee that helps people who have fought to keep the foundations of our institution, of our democracies alive. I couldn't have asked for a better place to be. And yes, I think that having spent 20 years in the military, I've experienced some of the same things that they have, so I love working on those committees because there are a lot of veterans in our state, now young and old, that need our assistance.
Well, and those issues are amplified by the fact that our nation's been at war for a number of years. And, I mean, they're always important, but they're particularly important now, and certainly new challenges are coming forward. You were a sponsor of, and your group collectively was responsible this past session for a number of bills that directly dealt with veterans' issues. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yeah, one that I'm really proud of is the commission. We were here not too long ago with the governor signing into law a bill that establishes a commission of different experts in Rhode Island whose focus is going to be what is it that our veterans really need. Different veterans, need different things, and so this group is going to look at that. And before this, we didn't have it coordinated as such. So I'm really proud that that's happening, and that's looking at it over a long range. I love having good plans. The other bill that I'm really proud of is that, and I have to give kudos to the universities here in Rhode Island, both public and private, who are making it possible for our returning veterans to use a lot of the experiences that they've had in the military to get college credits and to put them on a fast track toward getting accepted into school. Make no mistake about it, they're not taking people who are not qualified or haven't done their jobs, but there are a lot of people who've learned a lot of skills, and there are a lot of people, I think, if you fought 3 or 4 times in a foreign land, like my son and others have, when you come back home, you should be able to go to one of the universities and say, look, I've got experience, I need help getting in. And I have to say, and I won't name them all, but there was not a single university president who didn't say, Marvin, let's make this work. And it wasn't all about me, but I did talk to all of them about that, and they made it work among all of the different regulations that they have.
Yeah, but you became the voice of the veterans at that point. You were the point person.
Yeah.
And, you're right. I mean, who possibly would not support that kind of concept? I think it's vitally important.
Well, I think it showed what we can do as a group or as a community when we simply say, here's a need. I don't have all of the expertise in making this need work. Mr. College University President, can you help us? To a person, they said, yes. What do you need? We'll work through all of the different things we have to work through. And we did it.
Yeah, there's government. There's an example of how government can work.
Absolutely.
And, again, that's a great entree into my next question, because the other committee that you serve on is HEW, Health, Education, and Welfare. And not only having advanced degrees yourself, but having an educational background, maybe even in the military, it's only appropriate and reasonable that you serve on that committee too. Again, I think a real good use of your talents and skill set.
We operate under what I call the educational industrial complex. It's huge. It's huge in the nation, and it's huge here in Rhode Island. And, 7 of my great years was spent working in an environment where people at the top were trying to make a system work for all of the cities and towns and school boards, and that's a daunting challenge as it is. But I learned a lot from that, from the 3 different positions that I served in doing it. And I try and use that in our committee meetings when we're talking about really tough things, everything from standardized testing to the funding formulas to how can the state continue to help in higher education. That's a big job. So having that experience, I think, has helped me ask the right questions in meetings or understand things. And I must say that on these committees, we share information. If there's someone on our committee that is an expertise in an area, they will absolutely share it with the rest of us. And so I'm able to share those things with my committee mates.
In fact, your committee, HEW, just had a meeting recently on an important health issue. Tell our viewers about that.
Oh, yeah, that's key. One of the misconceptions is that because we're in recess, we don't work. That's not true. There are a lot of committees who work very diligently during these times. We were called in to get an informational briefing the other day about a medical company that was operating here in Rhode Island that was really helping very, very sick people who were in pain manage that particular pain. And the company got caught up in what we are now beginning to see a lot of red tape or blue tape or yellow tape, whatever you want to call it, in terms of trying to help individuals. So we had a committee meeting where we had Dr. Fine come in and give us an overview of the process by which companies can get their certificates of need in order to provide services to people who are sick. And it was a 2-hour briefing. It was a long time and it was a packed room. But I think from that, and we're going to have another meeting where we will now listen to the company that was here. There's always two sides to every issue. And in the middle of that, I think we're going to be able to look at the laws or the regulations that we have that govern that and see where they can be tweaked. And that's key, because I think in almost anything, if we take a look at what governs what we do, we can find room for improvement. Because after all, as one committee person said, there are 4 or 5 really sick people in this state who need the services that this company was about to offer. And to his credit, Dr. Fine said, I think we may be able to find a way, even among the different regulations that we have, to make this work. So those committee meetings are important.
Well, and again, when you talk about any time government can streamline the process or reduce the bureaucracy, we hear that all the time when it comes to economic development. I know the House worked diligently this past session on economic development and creation of jobs. And I have to believe that's going to continue to be a focus as you move forward in the next session.
Well, now that's when my voice changes, my attitude changes, and Marvin Abney changes. Economics and the well-being of this state is critically important to me. And I think that a lot of us who are elected officials need to get over ourselves, and I'm very serious about that, and understand that we're here to serve for the good of the whole, and that's not easy. But particularly in economics, that's why I attend these other conferences and things. We need to learn what really works, what doesn't work, how to fuse these things together, because people so much depend on us. And going forward, absolutely, I think economics is certainly going to be high on my agenda. For example, we've got to think forward. I was in Panama about 2 years ago. They're making the Panama Canal bigger, for example. That means that there are going to be a lot of ships that are coming from the Panama Canal up our East Coast. We have some of the greatest, opportunities for water ports in the world. We need to look at those kinds of things. And one of the things that I learned in some of these conferences was that if you ask me, well, Marvin, what do we do economically? I can say we passed 33 bills that had to do with economics. If you talk to some of my compatriots from other places, we passed 4, we passed 5. But they were such comprehensive bills that the legislators spent time defining what was actually needed for where they were, because 33 bills are fine and that's good. But at the end of the day, what are we going to do next year? Pass 133? What we need to do, I think, is take that as the basis and then focus on those things that we know would help work to really turn our economy around. And I don't think we're going to get there without a heck of an in-state fight, but we have to. We've got to. It's too much depending on us for that.
Creating good-paying jobs solves a lot of the other problems, right?
Absolutely, and that's what I mean by the good of the whole. We're all elected, and I'm from District 73. There are certainly needs in District 73. But you know what? If we don't have the resources for me to fight for those needs for District 73, nothing happens.
Exactly.
So now we have to look at what can each of us do as 75 representatives and 38 senators do to help the economy grow so that we will have those resources to help our constituents in their needs.
And again, too, another concern of our state and every state in the union is public safety. One of your victories this past session centered around some legislation you sponsored about increasing penalties for people that use stolen weapons in the commission of crimes.
Right.
Obviously, that's a serious concern. How did it come about? And you have to feel pretty good about that.
I feel really, really good about that. One thing that happens in the legislative branch is that we don't dream up everything that we put forward, but different committees will come to you and say, we worked on this. Would you help us sponsor that? And that's what happened. In this case, when I read it and looked at it, I said, well, that's exactly what I would feel. One of the things that happens in the legislature is that people try to figure out who you are and what you represent. And I think I said on the in the debate, on the budget debate, people look at Marvin Abney and go, here is a black guy from Newport, so because he's black, he must be absolutely ultra-liberal. Then they'll say, wait a minute, he's a military officer, so he must be absolutely to the far right. Then they'll say, oh, he's got an MBA, so he must be pro-business. Oh, no, wait. His wife works, she's a teacher, so he must be pro-union. People try to put you in these, there's a whole cottage industry of people putting you in little blocks. Well, we can't do that. You know, I'm a combination, as I said in the beginning, of a number of things. So there are issues like firearm safety that's huge, but there's no doubt in my mind that we have to give our systems the ability to deal with that. And so I think, obviously, increasing penalties from one to another is one effective way of doing it. It had nothing to do with the debate over the Second Amendment. I'm from Texas. I understand that, you know. But I do think that it's time for all of us to make some common sense adjustments to what we do. And I just thought that was one of them. My goodness. After our gun control debate here, look at all of the things that are occurring in the country now. Yes, a lot of it has to do with our mental health system, but a lot of it has to do with just common sense things.
I get the feeling from that example you just gave about people trying to pigeonhole you that maybe just the opposite is true, in that it gives you a diverse background and sensitivity in a lot of different categories.
It does. It does. My wife gets on me because she said, well, Marvin, you're not really a humble person, you know, but I really am. I think that my background and experience, it does give me the ability to work with all of my counterparts. You got to remember this. Marvin Abney can't get anything passed by himself. I've got to walk and get 38 other people to agree with something, and then enough in the Senate. So people have got to trust me. They've got to believe in what I'm presenting, that I understand it. Otherwise, you don't get any place.
Well, Representative Major, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fascinating. We've interviewed you in shorter segments in the past, and I think of the words of the late Zig Ziglar, the world's greatest salesman.
Oh, yeah.
He once said, it's attitude, not aptitude, that will determine your altitude. As I watch you move around this building, you always have a skip in your step. You always are very enthusiastic and positive. Thanks for sharing some of that background with us today and some of your insight. I wish you the very best as you move forward in the next session.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
And, of course, we could not do it without you. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Dave Barber. Remember, you heard it straight from the Gavel.